What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a first look and some new details about Star Wars Outlaws following its recent presentation, because this video is going live right as an embargo ends and will, I believe, roughly contain the information that was composed in that showcase at the Ubisoft Forward event. So to give an explanation there, a few weeks back towards the end of May, Ubisoft reached out and asked if I would be interested in attending a remote press events where they showed off portions of this game. So to be clear, I have not played this for myself. They simply showed us all of this footage and everything, allowed us to take notes, and then provided some B-roll. So that's important context to understand, and I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end, because for the bulk of this video, I want to focus on the specifics of what was announced and shown, and then afterwards I'll get into some likes and dislikes towards the end of the video. But first up, Star Wars Outlaws puts us in the role of Kay Vess and her alien sidekick Nyx. This game is going to take place at the height of the Empire's power, meaning that they are fully in control of the galaxy, but as they are actively staving off things like the Resistance, for instance, they're a little bit distracted, which has offered the underground criminal community, let's say, the ability to rise up and thrive under that environment. So this is where Kay Vess comes in. Being a normal human by the standards of Star Wars, she has this big dream of freedom to be able to go and explore the way she wants to without obviously being tied down to places that the Empire controls, being ground to dust under the heel of their rule. But in order to accomplish this, we're going to get up to some unsavory things. For starters, we're planning a giant heist, which forms the backbone of a lot of what this story is going to be about, and much of what you're going to see here today is about setting up for and preparing to do that heist, which is going to put us into contact with, of course, all sorts of the colorful characters you might expect from a Star Wars game, but that's about as much as we know story-wise at the moment. So let's talk a little bit more about gameplay specifics. Now, I do want to stress here towards the beginning of this part that I do not have full understanding of how this game plays outside of some of the structured missions that they showed. I don't know if this is a more open world experience, if it's more of a hub system, because they show things like space flight and, of course, us being on different planets, so I just don't know what that looks like in between these missions. But otherwise, gameplay is going to be a mix of stealth and blaster fights, as it were. Now, on that front, Kay Vess here has access to a sort of default sidearm, which is your laser pistol, or your blaster pistol if you prefer. This blaster pistol has a few different modes of fire, which includes things like a standard round, as well as a big charge-up stun attack that can take enemies down in one hit, for instance. But in addition to this basic sidearm, we also, in one of the scenes, see her pick up a blaster rifle that then, of course, gives her access to heavier firepower, and then later on in the video, we also see her using throwables and things like grenades, etc., and setting up traps. But that's in addition to the stealth gameplay. As an outlaw and someone not exactly tailored to a frontal assault, Kay Vess engages in a lot of stealth, and in both of these scenarios, our little alien sidekick Nyx is a frequent member of the action. Basically, Nyx is able to provide distractions and do things for you that allow you to access things that would typically be out of your reach, such as, for instance, activating a trap as an enemy walks by, or simply causing a distraction allowing you to sneak up on the enemy. So it looks, at first glance at least, that there's going to be a few different ways to approach combat in a way that doesn't involve using the Force. Now, a few other things to note is that they did show off some spaceflight gameplay where you're actively in control of a ship fighting off TIE fighters, though again, I don't know if this is just a one-off mission or something that will regularly happen. But there are a handful of other things as well, such as lockpicking, hacking, and a sort of Deadeye mechanic that allows you to target enemies more effectively, as you might expect from a game like this that focuses on shooting while maintaining its RPG ability. Now, beyond just that, though, we also see Kay Vess regularly engage in a bit of platforming, climbing up the traditional rope nets, just things like that, moving through the environment, with some gameplay that I would say is almost expected of anything coming out of a third-person action adventure. But across what was presented to me, we see Kay Vess infiltrating a hangar controlled by the Empire to steal a ship that's going to be used in the heist. And then later on, we see her interacting with various criminal elements in different ways. One of which is moving through the ruins of an abandoned scavenger wreck that has been deemed too unsafe to scavenge from normally, but we need something very specific from, of course, so naturally we're going to go get it, which leads into a run-in with bounty hunters that want Kay-Vess's head, as she is a wanted criminal after all. And that's where we see some of the elements of Nyx interacting with traps and how you can maneuver the battlefield a little bit. And then finally, the game showed our protagonist here stealing a relic from one criminal organization to give it to another in what appears to be a somewhat common exchange of favors that naturally involve all sorts of crazy alien creatures that you might expect from the Star Wars franchise. So broadly speaking, that's, I would say, the most important stuff to know from what I gathered from this press event, which leads me to my likes and dislikes about it, my actual thoughts. So for me at least, I will say that I enjoy looking at a Star Wars game that is not strictly speaking about Jedi and Sith and the Force. I think Star Wars as a franchise has a lot of potential to do other things that aren't those very well-tread stories, and they actually seem to be doing that with this game, and I enjoy basically the premise of what they're trying to do. Now, a reservation there I have is that, let's be real, Ubisoft is known for their very formulaic open worlds, and my concern is, going into this, that might be the case for this game, but nothing I've seen in this particular showcase either alleviates that or confirms it one way or the other, because I don't know what the gameplay structure here is outside of these missions. Another thing I enjoyed, though, was how involved Nyx seemed to be in the combat and whatnot. Not so much because the idea of an alien companion helping me is nice, you know, it's pretty cool, I guess, but more so that it enables Nyx to do a lot of things that would otherwise be more difficult in a way that feels natural to the setting. Like, for instance, I don't need to magically use the Force to activate a trap a good ways away. Nyx is the gameplay mechanic that activates that thing for you, but functionally provides the same sort of effect, and I can kind of see why they went that route. And from what I saw on show here, I was pleasantly surprised by how some of that worked. Now, another thought of mine is simply, how are they going to keep a lot of what they've shown here, combat and gameplay-wise, interesting over the span of this game, which makes me wonder how long it is, because while something a little more grounded in terms of combat is not unwelcome to me, just looking at this, knowing that I've essentially got one sidearm with a few different fire modes and potentially some environmental weapons to use, it occurs to me that this game might struggle with, I would say, a very repetitive combat loop over the course of its adventure, because if they don't do some unique things to mix that up, I could see it getting stale, which makes me wonder about the progression systems on offer that we didn't really see here. Now, I think some of what they might be planning is to intersperse the spaceflight combat to do exactly that, mix up those moments. However, again, I don't know if that's a common occurrence or if it was specifically related to just that one mission. But in terms of reservations, with this presentation, I would say they didn't really show much of what the gameplay looks like outside of these missions. I don't know what exploration looks like, what there is to do besides these things, and while the gameplay that they've shown looks solid enough for what it is, I'd be interested in seeing what this game does, both in terms of its systems like progression and whatnot, but also simply what our character can get up to when we're not actively planning this heist, since the game is known to have some manner of a fully open world system. So how does that work? Is that like a planet-based system, etc.? Those are the questions I have that I didn't really see answers to here, and I wish they would have gone a little more in depth in. Though realistically, we likely won't have too much longer to wait to get some of those answers, as this particular game is launching on, I believe it is August 30th, and I'm almost certainly going to take a look at it then, though it is my understanding that this game is available on PC via Ubisoft Connect, which is at the very least a little bit annoying to me personally, but I will also say that with this game's base price being $70, and I believe the most expensive version of it being like $130, it's going to have a long way to climb in terms of player expectations and what this game has set itself up to be, that is to say an open world action adventure, and for a game like this to justify that price tag, I think they're going to have to knock it out of the park, to be honest. But ultimately, time will tell on that one, which is pretty much where I'm going to wrap up this particular video. There has been my thoughts and everything on this particular title. Let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.